Good evening, everybody, and welcome to We the People. Tonight, our guest is Peter Khalil. He is running in Washington's 3rd Congressional District. Hi, Peter. How are you?
Hey, everybody.
Thank you for
Good
joining.
to be on your show, John.
Yeah, I'm excited to have
Laura.
you. And Peter, of course, will be answering your questions as well because this is an engagement broadcast. Laura, tell them how to do that.
I will be in chat, Laura Livengood, and if you have a question for Peter, write the word question and spell it out, and we will try to get a couple questions in at the end of the broadcast.
That's right. But of course, we have our Progressive Jeopardy and some interesting stuff to talk about as well. It's a very interesting conversation with Peter in the last couple of days. I really appreciate you taking the time to do a tech check with me, and that was a really good conversation. We had kind of a pre-green room, Peter. Learned a lot, and I really want to ask, you've got a great background, and we'll talk more about that, but what pissed you off enough to run against Jamie in Washington's 3rd? Because the last time, and I remember this with Dorothy Gasquet, this was a very tough race, and there was a lot of stuff that went down. So why did you decide this battle?
So the reason that I decided to run has nothing to do with any sort of anger or anything like that. In fact, no, not at all. And I don't even consider myself to be running against an incumbent, but rather for a seat, and I'll tell you why.
All right, I love it.
So, and it goes back to my parents, and since we have a couple minutes, I'll tell you. So my parents are Coptic Christians from Egypt, and they're a religious minority over there, and they got treated poorly. They got treated, very similarly to how African Americans in the South got treated under Jim Crow. Their churches would be blown up. People in their towns would be assaulted. They would disappear. You go to places like banks, and they would see on your national ID that it said Christian, and sometimes the banker would say something like, "Well, we don't have your money today. Why don't you come back and stand in line tomorrow?" So both of my parents came to the United States for a better life. And they literally, it's the typical immigrant story. It's the American story. They came with nothing. My dad came here in 1969. And believe it or not, the first television broadcast he ever saw was Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. And his reaction to that, and he saw it in a bar, actually, by happenstance. And his reaction to that was, "Oh, my God. If America can do this in 1969, can you imagine what they can do in 1979, 89, 99? And my mom came here in 1974. I don't know how they met. They never, ever talk about Egypt. So I imagine their lives must have been pretty difficult. She came here in 74. One of the first broadcasts she saw was Nixon resigning on August 8th, 1974. And she thought that was amazing, too, because a leader of a country resigned and there was no bloodshed and there was no revolution. So we are a special country. And so getting to the why. My parents came here with nothing. They mortgaged their house to send me to some of the best schools. And in fact, I grew up in a very small town of 3,500 people in New Jersey called Highbridge. And we had cornfields and tomato fields around and agriculture. It was a very, very bucolic, beautiful town. And they used to drive me about 45 minutes to an hour to go to these schools that they sent me to. And in 5th grade, my dad gave me this book called The Buck Stops Here. And it's a book that has a drawing of each president. And then underneath the drawing of the president, it has a little rhyme. And it was meant to teach you how to memorize the presidents in order. And my dad said, "I want you to memorize these presidents. And here's why. I will always be a guest in this country," he said to me. And he was a citizen by then. He said, "I'll always be a guest in this country, but your words come out without an accent, which means you can make change in this country. You can be somebody that people trust to take their voices and make our country better." And I was in 5th grade when he gave me this book. So I said, "Thanks for the book, Dad." It did not occur to me, the gravity of what he was saying. Fast forward, and we're getting to the why. I promise I'm answering the question.
It's a long question. You can have a long answer.
Fast forward, I ended up going to Columbia University, and I ended up studying international politics. And then I went to Stanford Law School, where I met my wife, Rebecca, who is actually from out here. And that's how a guy from New Jersey ended up in the 3rd Congressional District. She was raised in Ridgefield, Washington.
Okay.
And on the day of my graduation, my dad says to me, "Think about the probability of a man like me," referring to himself, "who's from a village with no electricity and no running water, who's been exposed to tuberculosis and who's had schistosomiasis multiple times. That's a parasite from swimming in the Nile River. Having a son who's about to become a lawyer in the United States of America. Think about that probability. What do you think the natural probability of that is? And I said, well, probably almost zero. And that's when it really hit me. Two things hit me. I owe this country a debt of gratitude, number one. And number two, this country made my story possible. So the reason that I am running for office is not out of anger. It's out of the sheer excitement, exuberance, and drive to give people the power to make their own stories possible by changing our laws so that we have equality in this country, so that we have opportunity in this country, so that we can reaffirm the idea that the United States government exists to give everybody the opportunity to have a good life. That is why I'm running.
Wow. Well said. I like that. That's a good answer. And it's better than what mine is. I'm a disgruntled Gen X who was expecting to be flying through space right now, and we're not. Right.
They always told us about the flying cars, and the flying cars haven't happened yet, but maybe we'll get them.
Well, yeah, I think we need to tackle healthcare and the climate crisis first, but yeah, we'll get there.
Right.
Actually, that was really a fantastic story, and you know, it really does. For somebody like me, who is very disconnected from the immigrant experience, because it's, you know, many generations of white dudes named Ellis over here, you know, it brings me back in touch with what this country can mean to people and what it should mean to everybody. So that was really nice. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was well said. So now we know why you're running, and for everybody who doesn't recall 2018, this was Dorothy Gasquet's district, or is her district. She ran in 2018. She was a veteran, and they really didn't treat her very kindly in that race. Peter, you and I had talked a little bit about that, and I'm not going to slam the party. We've already talked about that, but how do you feel going into it this time? I know you've got a strong campaign, but what's your sense going into it this time? How's it going to be?
So I come from a long line of fighters. You know, my parents fought to get here. They fought to stay here, and they fought to make themselves a success in this country, and they fought to make me a success. And then I fought at some of the most competitive schools. I was actually also, you know, for very briefly during the financial crisis, an attorney on Wall Street, which, if you can imagine,
wow,
watching the economy implode, you know, that is tough. So, you know, I am ready to fight. I'm ready to fight for what people want. I'm ready to fight for a movement that is going to get our voices heard at the highest levels about Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, and the Anti-Corruption Act. So the sense that I have going into this is, yeah, of course, running for office, running for Congress, it's going to be incredibly hard, but I am a fighter and I don't give up. And we're going to win this. We're going to win this without magic. There's no magic here. We're going to engage more voters than anybody has ever engaged in this district before.
That's definitely what needs to happen, I think. And let's everyone show everybody what your district looks like, because it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's another one. It's got this weird piece, and I know this is I don't know why Marcus picked this. I don't know, him with the purple, but that's the Oregon boundary there, everybody, the Oregon-Washington border, and you can see, so Peter's district has Vancouver, which is just right up the road from Portland there, and then it goes way off into the rural areas, right? So you have this amazing stretch to travel, right, Peter?
We have the most, and you know, I know every candidate will say this because it's true, we have the most beautiful district on earth.
Okay.
And yes,
yeah,
it is expansive. It goes from the coast to the mountains to the forests. There are people of all stripes, conservatives of all stripes, liberals of all stripes, progressives. And we have to appeal to a lot of different people. We're diverse. We have industry, we have agriculture, we have healthcare, we have our ports. And we have the information industry out here as well. So we are going to have to appeal to a lot of different people. And the way that you do that is by talking to everybody about the things that are most important. And then also, again, no magic. It's about real empathy. It's about real understanding of the subtleties of what people are worried about, what they hope for, what they dream about, what keeps them up at night.
Right. So, okay, and that sounds really good. So now I'm going to drill down a little deeper into some topics, because the district is very close here between Long and Butler. And Carolyn was a straight line corporate Dem. There was nothing progressively special about her that I'm aware of. You're running on a very progressive platform. It looks very Bernie to me. Whether you want to associate it with Bernie or not, I don't know, because we've had some people want to stay away from that apparently. And it's early. I get that it's early. You're out there in campaigning. You're talking to what appears to be a red-leaning district. I want to know what you're hearing from them on climate change. How do you address that subject with them?
So farmers and city dwellers alike understand that our time is up when it comes to climate change. They all understand that. So there is fear, there's trepidation. And then when you go into the rural areas, there is a clear understanding. And by the way, people in rural areas do understand how sustainability works and how sustainable farming works and sustainable forestry. They understand the importance of maintaining their own livelihoods. But there's also trepidation about how people frame the issues. So we can't just go into those areas and say, well, we're just going to bring you some green jobs, because when people hear the phrase green jobs, they, automatically you go to, you're going to teach us how to work on windmills? No. We need to impart the notion that we already have the tools to make it possible for people to maintain their livelihoods and be in carbon neutral industries like the supply chain, the data industry, the caring professions, teaching, things like that, and even to maintain the value of their land by cultivating different crops. Hemp has been used as an example.
Here.
And even using methods like I met a farmer who does mitigation banking. So he is restoring wetlands on his farm so that when large companies have an impact on wetlands and have to pay for the government for credits to make up for that impact, they can buy credits from him. So really, he's trying to raise the value of his farmland without even cultivating it. People understand that our time is up, and what they're looking for are solutions that are feasible, not solutions that are incremental necessarily. We can't afford to be incremental anymore. We're 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures. We can't afford that anymore. But they want to know that there is going to be a next thing that they can go to. And we are showing them that by explaining the issue in a way that it hasn't been explained clearly before, because we sit and we listen to what people think and what they want. And we try to frame everything in terms of what people already have that they can use as our economy necessarily transforms over time to become carbon neutral.
All right. I like the sound of that. I get it, and I understand that you have to appeal. Okay, so on the one hand, I get it. You have to appeal to rural Americans and make sure they're hearing this the way that. On the other hand, a different perspective would be, why in the world would these people consider their jobs more important than a habitable planet? If they understand that we're at the end of our rope here, and this is why I brought up your environment page, and I want to ask you publicly if you would consider this right now. Your environment page on your website mentions a transition to a renewable energy system by 2050. We don't have till 2050. The new data says we're done by 2030. So it's like, I almost want to say, it's like, hey, rural America, I get it. You want to have a job you feel good about, but how about just air?
People in rural America do not consider jobs more important. They consider them one in the same. Believe you me, they consider them one in the same. And they are enthusiastic to transition. They just do not want to be left in the lurch. And I agree with them in that sense.
Sure, me too. They don't need to be left behind. We need to provide for everybody, right?
Yeah. But I wouldn't characterize them as thinking jobs are more important. Jobs are part of it, and I mean, jobs are intersected, collinear, if you will, if you want to use a geometry term, and they understand that infrastructure is going to be built as well. And part of building that infrastructure, for example, rural broadband internet, that will create jobs.
Absolutely.
And by the way, so to answer your question, when you talk about carbon neutrality until 2050, I just want to be clear. I support the ends of the Green New Deal, period. I support the Green New Deal. I think we need to turn it from a non-binding resolution into a bundle of policies that we can actually implement. And yes, it requires study, and yes, it requires expertise, and it's going to require not just the expertise of scientists, but the expertise of people who live down here. How do we maintain the character of your communities while also transitioning to carbon neutrality? It's a very complicated question.
It is because it actually affects everything in our system, and that's the big problem there. I appreciate your answer, because really, the numbers make no difference. What matters is that you understand the severity of the situation. Right. And that we do need to put it down into policy. It's nice to see all these politicians, and we've got ours in Oregon jumping on the policies, and it's like, you haven't done anything for 20 years, and now you're all excited about climate policy?
Right. We can't be reactive to it just because we're in emergency mode. We have to be proactive. Right. I mean, we've waited long enough. I understand that.
Exactly.
And the Congress was meant to be a deliberative body, and sometimes that deliberation simply takes too long. And you need to have. I mean, that's why you got to elect. You've got to elect people who understand legislation. You have to elect people who understand the law.
Oh, it's such a good point. I was actually going to make that during this. The fact that you're a lawyer, I think, gives you an upper hand in the entire aspect of politics. It really does. So. Yeah. Well,
I'm glad it's a benefit in some way.
Maybe not socially, but it's a benefit politically, right? Let's get it. It's time for Progressive Jeopardy, everybody. And this is going to be special because we've got an interesting topic to lead into here. So here are the questions, and the categories are a little weird, everybody, but it's because we got some strange stuff to talk about. The categories are hate, misogyny, racism, and sexism, service with humility, and 111 drones, and Peter says. So pick a category.
So do I get to choose the category?
Yes, you do. I know there's only 3.
All right. Well, let's start with hate, misogyny, racism, and sexism for 100. I only win unicorns here?
We have no money. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll take unicorn.
That's all you get.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Anti-capitalist. The question is, this Washington State freshman senator recently said, after they close that door, that's when it gets real. That's when my 28 colleagues got real. And that's when I heard hate, misogyny, and racism and sexism from people you would not expect.
Who is Mona Doss? Somebody I admire very much and whose story mirrors mine in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. This is a crazy story that I was doing research on, just let's talk, what we could talk about with Peter and going on to Washington. And she's a freshman senator, and the statements that she made are pretty harsh. I mean, they're pretty, it's clear in what she's saying here, but she actually made a kind of a recant on it, softening the blow. How do you feel about, I know you said she's really impressed you and you have a lot of respect for her, but how do you feel about this whole the vibe that she's got going on here with this?
Like her, I live in 2 worlds, and she lives in 2 worlds too. She's a legislator, and that is one of the most vaunted positions, and very, among legislators, there's very little diversity. We can all agree. And she lives in the world of somebody with a history of an immigrant past. I lived in those 2 worlds too. I've worked on Wall Street. I've gone to prep school. I've gone to Stanford Law.
Right.
There is a structural problem in our country. We have not yet overcome racism, sexism, misogyny. So are you asking me, if you're asking me how I feel about what she said, I mean, I don't know what she experienced, right, and I can't speak to what she said, but I have been there. I have been in situations where I have felt excluded or invisible or, even discriminated against. That's why we have a progressive movement. That's why we are trying to fundamentally change a system that has been stacked by people at the top against people at the middle and the bottom. I can't say that I am surprised by her perception of the issue or what occurred.
Right.
But it's something that people of color, we work through every day. And it's something that we're going to keep working through. I hope by my son's generation that it won't be an issue. But we said that after Obama was elected in 2008, that, some people said that we were a post-racial society. That's not true.
No. Not even close.
But it breaks my heart. It does. It just breaks my heart that things like this. Again, I don't know what happened,
Right.
but it breaks my heart that we have this structural issue and that it intersects with so many things: economic justice, environmental justice. It permeates the lives of people who bear the brunt of the exclusion every single day, and we need to remember that.
Well, and it's unfortunate that we're seeing it in our government body. That's I think if I were to see this just from a complete outsider and know nothing about either of you and what goes on in the Senate, it's just an illness within the old guard of the party, to me. And I mean, the solution, I guess, is to vote them out. Right? And to make sure we're vocal about it, to be open about it, right? Do you believe in being open and transparent about these occurrences and what happens?
I do believe in being transparent, but what I do want to say is in my own career, in my own life, I take people on a case-by-case basis, right? I take people on a person-by-person basis. So, I don't, again, not knowing the facts of the case,
right? Absolutely.
Not knowing the facts of the issue, I tend to, if you do demonstrate racism, sexism, misogyny, there is no place for you at the table as a legislator. You cannot do that in this country and expect to maintain a position of public trust, because you represent not just people who look and sound like you represent everybody. Right. So I would agree with you if people did demonstrate those things, yeah, sure, vote those people out.
Man. Absolutely. Well said. And I say that only because I want Mona Das and others to know that they have the support of the people on this. Please speak out, right? Yeah. We want to hear. We want to know what goes on, and it ties into something that happened today. And this is going to be a long topic, but Nancy Pelosi, and we talked about this in Green Room, basically told the progressives in a backroom meeting to shush, stop tweeting, right? And it's the old guard talking to the new, saying, that's not how we do things here. And it's just, I'm only saying this because I appreciate you running to affect change there. That's why. So, let's get on to the next category. Service with humility and 111 drones, or Peter says.
Can I say one more quick thing?
Yes, please.
In terms of speaking out, it is important to speak out. But we also need to remember that there is an amount of trauma that comes with it.
Sure, absolutely.
And so we need to be trauma, and we need to be sensitive to that as well, so that we can encourage people to speak out and actually have them do so. So it's going to take some structural change as a society. Sorry to prolong my answer to that question, but it's something very important. My wife is a victim rights attorney, and she deals with traumatized people, and these are traumas.
Right.
Anyway.
I'm glad that's absolutely. I wanted you to say something. That's phenomenal, and I did not know that's what your wife did. That's awesome. It makes me think of Kavanaugh.
She is not only my best friend, but the best lawyer you will ever meet. She should be on the Supreme Court. I hope that she one day gets nominated to the Supreme Court, because she's amazing.
That's awesome. What a great thing to say about your wife. That's really cool, and great to have somebody like that in your corner, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Pick another category.
Okay, I'm going to go down the board. Service with humility and 111 drones for 100 unicorns.
This is a funky story. I was like, what? So Washington State Patrol builds up a fleet of 111 drones. The question, so I went backwards, everybody. This State Patrol has more than 100 drones. In comparison, Oregon State Patrol has 3. Go ahead and drop your answer, Peter. I just blew it for everybody.
Oh yeah, no, and I saw this article. Who's the Washington State Patrol?
What's up with the talk about criminal justice reform and how that ties into what I would consider the more important issue of police reform?
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing that everybody needs to know about the criminal justice system, and probably already knows, is that a lot of our laws come from the 17th and 18th century and have we're slowly trying to adapt the common law here.
Wow.
To, some of us are trying to adapt the common law to to modern necessities. And so when I look at the proliferation of drones in local police forces, I start to think, okay, what's going to happen to the warrant requirement? How are we going to refine the warrant requirement to make sure that these drones aren't misused to unlawfully surveil people?
Right.
So, as part of any criminal justice reform platform, you have to think about people's Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment constitutional rights. And you need to think about holistically, what is best for maintaining the order of our country, but also maintaining the idea that we are a free society. So, if you talk about things like, commuting the sentences of nonviolent drug offenders, I'm very much for that. I'm very much for expunging certain of those offenders' records because you need to have people reintegrate into society, and you can't have them reintegrate into society fully without some kind of clean slate and without some kind of wraparound services. Let's be very clear. We all know that prison does not rehabilitate, and I don't think anymore that it's meant to rehabilitate, and that is our problem. That is the problem. That is why we have recidivism. That is why we have a revolving door into prison. We need to stop doing that. We need to make sure that we enforce people's rights, number one, and reintegrate people back into society with services that actually get them to be productive. And we need to. We incarcerate minority populations at a disproportionate rate. Period. We do. We need to own the fact that we've been doing that. We need to reverse that process. We also need to make sure that people aren't making profit off prisons. There should be no private prisons. It makes no sense. No. This is a government. A prison is a public good. Government provides public goods, and this should be no different. It shouldn't be. It should not be privatized. People should not be making money off this. Are there any other aspects of criminal justice reform that you'd like to talk about?
Well, let's talk about guns, because my guess is that you've got a lot of folks in your district that like them and, want to keep them. And there's a lot of conversations about how the Democrats are going to take them away. But we've got a lot of problems with guns, including police brutality. So what do we do there? What do we do with the guns?
So I believe everybody should be required to lock up their guns in a safe when not in use. I believe that all guns should be tracked in a universal registry. I believe there should be universal background checking, mental health checking. Nobody with any sort of contact with the criminal justice system related to domestic violence should have a gun, and nobody, certainly who is mentally ill, should have a gun. We, as a nation, are gun owners, and there are a lot of gun owners in the 3rd Congressional District. And the previous progressive candidate was a gun owner and a veteran. I respect the Second Amendment. I respect that we do have the right to bear arms, and the Supreme Court has interpreted over and over again that we have that right. But I also, we need to stop the epidemic of gun violence in this country, and there is an epidemic. We cannot have more school shootings. We cannot have more pulse nightclubs. And I think one of the main ways to prevent those things is, number one, to have what they call common sense gun legislation. But number two, Medicare for all, believe it or not, with a mental health, free mental health care. A lot of gun deaths are suicides. A lot of people go untreated and have mental health problems and own firearms. If we had a comprehensive medical care system for our country, I believe we would also have fewer gun deaths.
I agree, 100%. And well said. I know I was going to bring Laura Livengood in here because I see a question from chat that actually looks relevant, and I thought you might want to pull it up there, Laura.
Yeah, let's do that. Schultze asks, how do you feel about the death penalty, and should we completely abolish it?
The purpose of the death penalty in the legal system has been historically deterrence. I don't know that there is much evidence for the fact that the death penalty deters anybody from committing a crime. I know that there have been lots of people who were wrongfully sentenced to death and lived on death row for most, if not all, of their lives. I think as an industrialized society, we don't need a death penalty. We are a society of laws, and we're able to enforce those laws in ways that are not violent. As a sophisticated legal system, I think it is a bit of an outdated and barbaric institution that harkens back to having gatherings in the town square for executions. I don't think that's who we are as a society. Certainly, you should be punished for breaking that social contract, for committing murder. You should be in prison for life. But I think the death penalty as applied in this country does not serve the purposes it was meant to serve. It is not a deterrent.
All right. And you muted yourself already, Laura. But yeah, that's all right. I'm gonna follow up with that because this is one that I struggle with a lot. All right. So I pretty much feel that Rex Tillerson should be dead. I have no problem with the idea of Rex Tillerson not being allowed to continue his life because he's murdered entire species. He's destroyed entire ecosystems. He's put us into the 6th grade extinction. Now, that's not to say I don't think there couldn't be another form of justice and handed down. I just don't see our legal system capable of that. What do you think would be a just punishment for somebody who has caused the 6th extinction of mankind, or of this planet, I should say? You know? How do we do that?
For something that you are essentially calling a mass genocide?
Yes. I mean, what did we do with Hitler and the Nazis? We hung a bunch of them. The CEO of the company that made Cyclone B assassinated. You know, at some point, they're a super criminal, right? What do we do with super criminals?
You know, it's very interesting. So my wife does victims' rights law. And a lot of what happens sometimes at a sentencing or at, as people sit in prison, can provide, and it in no way allays the hurt and the pain, and it will never bring people back. But it can provide some amount of closure to trauma. It is always better that we bring someone to justice alive than dead, because people want to know why. People want remorse. People want an explanation. We are a world as humans of storytellers. We want the loose ends tied. And by keeping people like, and I'm not advocating, I'm not saying that, certainly not saying that, the Nuremberg executions were not deserved. But as a modern society, we can bring people to justice for the rest of their lives and also strive to understand why. Why did this happen? What motivated you? And a lot of times that provides whatever little modicum of comfort to people. We're all victims of climate change. We're all survivors at the moment. But some people haven't survived. But I think part of unraveling that web that led to that, what you would call genocide, is to bring those people to justice and then try to understand. And that does not mean forgive, and that does not mean forget. We punish them. But I still do believe in our basic humanity does not dictate simply summarily executing people.
I agree with your statement in theory, because we seem to do it a lot. You know what I mean? But and I hear you on that. I think a lot of people in the audience and other people who are totally like on the Bernie side of things, against the death penalty, say, well, why can't he just spend the rest of his life cleaning up, his disasters, working in a chain gang? All right, I might be up for that, and people could, there'd be a drone following him the whole time, so we could go look at the example that he displays as an ultimate symbol of greed and destruction.
And at some point, you've wreaked too much destruction to be able to. So the destruction that you would wreak on the scale that you're talking about, the work that you can do to remedy it as a prisoner, as a ward of the state, will pale in comparison to that destruction.
Sure, but
so it's a symbolic punishment.
It is, but I might be down with that as long as it's horrible enough. You know what I'm saying? I'm okay with that. It's hard labor. Like the idea of like cracking rocks for the rest of your life or something. But I want him doing something useful. I just wanted to get your take on that because I get that we need to be a nicer, kinder humanity. I want that. And I want the greedy to understand they can't be greedy anymore.
Yes. Well, and I'm in favor of imprisoning corporate executives who commit fraud. I mean, that almost never happens. And that's the other thing. Not until I was in law school did I learn, that the purposes of a criminal justice system are things like rehabilitation and deterrence.
Yes.
And to the extent that we can actually get rehabilitation, we should try.
Right.
And to the extent that we can deter, we should try. But no. And please don't get me wrong. I do think a lot of the people involved in the 2008 financial crisis should have been brought to tougher justice. And I was there. I was on Wall Street when that happened.
Right. We didn't. They got bailed out. Nobody went to. It was bad. One guy, right? One guy was the fall guy. I'm running late because we've been chatty and it's totally my fault.
Sure.
Peter says it's your final category here. And by the way, everybody, tell everybody your Twitter handle. It
is Khalil, Khalil, 4 and Congress.
Right.
Khalil for Congress.
We'll show it at the end. We need everybody to go there and follow his new Twitter account. He had some crap go down with his old Twitter account, so it's fresh. And we gotta
we do have some questions that are coming in that I know we're over time that won't be able to get to. I'm encouraging people to either put them in the comments of the video so that you can come back here.
And if we can make up some time in the air, I'm happy to answer questions. That's my favorite part of campaigning.
Let's hit them. Let's do them.
Okay.
Why not?
Okay. Well, let's get through your progressive Jeopardy.
All right, we'll get through Jeopardy. That's a good point. Thank you, Laura. All right, so this is what you said. And this is off Facebook, and I know you can't read it here. Hang on. There we go. And it says, when blank first ran for president in 2008, he was told that his opponent in the Democratic Party was inevitable, but she wasn't. Nobody is inevitable because democracy is beautiful, and you go on to say some really nice things about it. So what's the answer there?
Who is Barack Obama?
Who is Barack Obama? Yes, excellent. And this seems innocent enough of a statement.
I feel like I'm in court.
seems innocent enough a statement, but this was the picture that you used on Facebook to describe this, and I'm just going to wait because we have a little delay, and I'm waiting for the triggers to show up in chat. Evil and eviler. Right?
Oh, okay.
And then this is you responding to the blowback from that image. And just talk about what happened here. And the only reason the only reason I posted that picture was to try to illustrate the dynamic that we have here in the 3rd Congressional District. We have a sort of inevitable Democratic partner in campaigning here, who I was just trying to playfully point out is in no way inevitable because I'm here and I'm going to win. Right.
But the reason I posted that particular picture was because the last time I remember that dynamic existing in our history was Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton in 2008.
Sure.
And some people took it to mean that I endorsed either of those two candidates. I do not in any way. The one thing I want to say, though, is that I do owe a little bit of a debt of gratitude to President Obama because he made it possible for a man with a Middle Eastern name, his middle name is Hussein, to become a player in national politics. So he kind of blazed a trail for me. And I'm not opining on his policies in any way.
Right.
And that was sort of a playful picture, too, because she was sort of inevitable and then she was kind of vanquished. And then they were doing this silly hug where, clearly, we all knew the history between them, so I thought it was a little bit funny that they were hugging like that. And some people took it, as an endorsement, and it certainly wasn't.
Well, first, a couple things. A lot of the younger progressives don't know the history there and weren't around when Barack was running, and they don't know that most of the older progressives voted for Barack because we all thought he was going to be the hope and change that he said he was going to be.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to remember, this is back when we were all like, the fucking impossible just happened. A black dude with a Middle Eastern name just became the president of the United States.
Yes, and two things. Number one, I'm 37 years old, so I'm the oldest you can be and still be a millennial. And number two, I've also posted pictures of Richard Nixon, JFK, Gerald Ford, people who arguably have done a lot of, they were presidents and they're part of our history and maybe and arguably have done a lot of bad things. But, I don't see people who, lived in the 1970s saying, well, hey, man, you shouldn't post a picture of Richard Nixon. It's part of our history. And I post those. I like to do history on my site. I like to do the human side of the campaign and be a little tongue in cheek. But I absolutely do understand and acknowledge that both of the people in those pictures caused a lot of pain to our electorate. And maybe we have a lot of work to do, in their wake. They are also people. People are all very complex, right? People do great things in their life, and people do horrible things in their life, and we just need to remember that. And that was part of our history, for better, for worse.
It was. It was. I mean,
yeah.
and Barack Obama did mobilize a base of people. He really did. Then he dumped them immediately afterwards, but he mobilized a base of people for a while.
And he introduced the technological campaign. I don't think he could have mobilized that base without a savvy in technology. At least his team did.
Right.
And we follow the AOC. And even our campaign, we are very technologically oriented. My campaign manager is actually a developer and a data engineer, in addition to being a very accomplished politico. But it started. There's always good to come with that bad.
Right. Well, in general, we're hoping we can get some people in there.
Yeah, that's right. Never say always or never. Right.
I'm hoping we don't get any bad out of you, Bernie, AOC. But there's already been things that AOC's done that I've been like, that wasn't your best move, or wish you hadn't said that. We're human beings, right? And do this. So
it's hard to be on this stage, and I know I'm not on her stage. She's much more accomplished at this point, but it is hard. And we grant each other grace, hopefully. And all my intentions are certainly to further and to win as part of this movement, because this is our time.
It is. It is. Well, and we're out of time. It better be our time. It better be our time. You know what I mean? That's the way I feel like it. And I'm 49.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, 10 to 15 years and we'll be, things aren't going to be looking that good. But I'm really...
you meant we are out of time. Yes, we are out of time in that way. I thought you meant we were out of time on the show. And I
No.
To another 18 minutes.
We can give No, I just meant, when I look at all the issues, and yes, they're all tied together, climate change kind of has to be first, because you can't really do all the other things on an uninhabitable planet. And that's,
It intersects with everything. My son is asthmatic, and we have wildfires out here the last 3 years. And if we don't have a representative in Congress who even acknowledges climate change, we're not going to make any headway. I want my son to be able to breathe clean air, and I see the consequences of the air not being clean directly. It is heartbreaking as a father.
And it's, to that point, we really didn't talk a lot about Jamie Butler, because there's not much to say. She's a run-of-the-mill Republican who doesn't believe the climate crisis is real. And on her website, she's got a lot of talk about jobs, which is why I brought that up, because the Republicans focus a lot on job loss and that economic distress with regard to switching over to green, and they don't focus a lot on death. And so that's why we went that direction.
Yeah.
Kind of, let's get real with rural Washington, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like, and this is, I heard this from who we were talking to, that the farmers are really starting to understand, because they are being impacted pretty heavily at this point, right?
And farmers are very savvy. They understand the environment. They understand technology. And we can work with them to make sure that we have a transition that is not abrupt, and to use the tools that they already have to move them towards what is going to be this transformation. There is going to be a transformation. It's not as if you're going to elect me to Congress and I'm going to be the only person who brings it about. It is our economy is transforming. It is being replaced. Jobs are being replaced with more automation, and a lack of sustainability isn't going to help. We can either invest in the infrastructure of the future that our grandkids can benefit from, or we can keep being short-sighted and have industries that can no longer sustain themselves.
Exactly. Let's not all be horse and buggy industry, right? Mm-hmm. Laura Livengood, I know we've got some questions for the audience.
Yeah, this is the perfect tie-in to this question. So that I didn't know that if we'd have time to answer. But
Yes,
Brent McKinney, who is in Washington, asks about infrastructure. What does Peter think of the possibility of the county PUDs hooking up Tesla or others mega packs to Columbia River dams with adjacent solar and wind to help electrify the grid? What do you think?
Okay. That is a very granular and specific question. So
that's why I wasn't sure if we had time, and I was going to have him put it in the question. You can answer it later or put it in social. But if you have a short answer.
I sort of have a short answer. So here's the thing. You're in this election, what you need to strive to do is elect somebody who can judge a policy and look at its potential unintended consequences and judge the policy in context, right? So when you give me a question like that, which is an amazing and excellent question, the only answer that I have at this point is it sounds like an excellent idea. However, we do need to look at what possible unintended consequences might inure from it. And right now, today, I don't know enough about what a piece of what that singular policy is going to do for our region. Mm-hmm. It certainly sounds like a step in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So that is my short answer.
That's a great short answer.
Yeah.
That's good. Brent, do put that question in the questions under the video. And Peter, if you have time, you can go back later, and comment on it. That'd be great. But that was
all those pieces sound right to me. But I think the thing that Peter said that is the most important is we really haven't looked at the environmental impact of anything we've done.
Right.
I agree with that. That's a great question. That really is a great question. We should do extended stuff. What other questions do we have, Laura?
That was it. That was really the one that I was holding on to that I wasn't sure we could do.
All right. Well, damn. Peter, it's been awesome having you, and we will have you back to do roundtables around specific issues. I hope you'll join us for those.
Absolutely, and it's been awesome being here. Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. Tell everybody where to find you. We've got your links up here. Where do we go? Oh, we've got the Facebook campaign. We didn't get the Twitter up there because I wasn't sure what it was, but we have that in the lower third here, everybody.
Yes, it's so our website is KhalilForCongress.com, and of course my name is hard to spell. Mm-hmm. It's Khal as in Larry, IL as in Larry, FOR Congress.com. We have an app, so you can log in. We partnered some of the app developers who did apps for people like AOC. And
nice.
So we're going to have a big digital presence. This is going to be a very digital campaign. Of course, I'm going to be out there everywhere as well. Our Facebook is peter.khalil.1800. And our Twitter is Khalil, the number 4, and then Congress. And please, I must always ask, please do donate. No donation is too small. We are not taking corporate money.
Absolutely. Please, that is the biggest thing. Everybody donate, and if you're in Peter's area or you feel like working online with Peter, volunteer for the campaign, because every campaign needs people both online and offline to help them. So
certainly, and I did a little mini Facebook town hall yesterday. Oh, yeah. You can email me, you can message me. I for the most part I respond pretty quickly. I've quit my job to run this campaign, and so I am here for you. I also have office hours pretty much every morning. We can meet for coffee. We can talk about issues. This is what I'm here for. Wow,
that's huge. You quit. So you quit. This is full time. You quit your job to do this.
Yes, sir. We can't do it any other way. I can't imagine having a job and managing to connect with as many people as we need to connect with.
Yeah, it's unfortunate though, because the people that of course can manage to do this without jobs easily are the 1%. Right. Mm-hmm. And well-funded candidates.
I am very far from being the 1%, but yes, right. We have planned. This is the dream of my life, and this movement is the dream of many others' lives. So both dreams are going to happen, and we are going to send a message here in Southwest Washington that is going to be seen by the rest of the country, that progressives are here to stay, and we are the future. Our policies are the future of this country.
That's awesome. That's inspiring. I didn't realize that I didn't realize that this really is what you've been planning for quite some time, and this is really great.
Yeah.
You really sound like you have your campaign
You gotta
together.
do it.
That's right. Thank you.
It's very inspiring. I look forward to talking to you again, Peter. This has been a fantastic interview, and thank you for running.
You too, and thank you, John. Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, you bet.
Very welcome.
We're getting out of here. Marcus had picked a song, and we'd looked for something because Peter, you said you like classical. And, we talked about classical history, and then we talked about some other Steely Dan. Laura, Peter is the only person to date besides you who got the fact that F. Murray Abraham would be perfect for Gaucho.
Absolutely.
He just got it right off.
Totally.
Boom.
That's our musical. Steely Dan musical.
I was Steely Dan the musical is what I want to do if human beings survive. Anyway, we're getting out of here with a very appropriate piece. You know what? We got to bring Peter. I forgot to mention something incredibly important that he can't talk about. And it has to do with silencing of Democrats, young Democrats, and we didn't even talk about it. But
Because we can't talk about it.
We can't talk about it. And I'm just going to say it has to do with bullying, and let's all just hope that we can help Peter. Donations are what are going to push this through, really, because he needs to rise above the media narrative that's going to come out of Washington. So let's help them. Let's hope unsilence Peter Khalil for Washington's 3rd district. This is.
I'm the loudest. Usually the loudest Democrat in the room. So nobody's going to silence me. But thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna bring you back on to talk about that. I think we're gonna bring you and Shahid back on with some other people to talk about that, because Shahid's a lawyer. You're a lawyer. We'll do like a lawyer roundup, and just.
Oh, you don't want that. You.
No. Yes, we do. Yes, sir. So this is pretty awesome. This is Shahid Buttar from 2015. If you guys know, we're both Laura and I volunteer for his campaign. We've had him on many shows. He is also a lawyer, and he is taking on Nancy Pelosi. He did this video in 2015 because he is also a DJ, and he's just a great musician. And so listen to this. It's so perfect for what's going on right now.
I'm excited to hear it.
Thank you, everybody. And
Thanks,
who do we have coming
everyone.
up? Laura, who's next week?
Next week we've got Daniel Whitfield, who's running for U.S. Senate in Arkansas against Tom Cotton. Is going to be on the 16th.
16th, everybody. Join us for that.
Mm-hmm.
The NSA breaks the law every day. It doesn't matter who you are or what you say. They monitor your phone calls and emails anyway. Corrupt Congress and courts paving the way. There's a lesson you'll learn someday. Watch what you say. See, they spy on your mind, record your calls for posterity, commit daily executive crimes with impunity. They're the authorities here to keep us safe until the boot ends up on your face. It's the NSA against the Constitution. We the people are the ones our government is abusing. We can force any agency to make a new choice when we build a movement, each raising our voice. They lie about the origins of the evidence. They lie about the numbers of Americans watched. Immense too large for them to calculate, they sigh. A self-serving lie by the government's eye. Computing power unmatched in history. Presuming the power to wiretap humanity. It's insanity how large the hubris looms. The government's watching you in the bathroom, and they lie about it at every opportunity. Sustained abuses of every community. Unity across Washington, D.C. All 3 branches against the people we see. Bush signed a secret presidential decree. Obama talked a big game, but presidentially did everything he could to entrench the Bush legacy. A complex composed of military industry. Eisenhower 60 years before anticipated it'd be rising in the mix for generations growing. A crisis in democracy sowing the futures at stake. You can start by knowing. It's the NSA against the Constitution. We the people are the ones our government is abusing. We can force any agency to make a new choice when we build a movement, each raising our voice. For 100 years since World War I, the FBI versus free speech has held a gun. Constitutional rights on the run. The Palmer raised the first, but not the last one. Fast forward 40 years to the real Red Scare. McCarthy did a number, but the FBI was there. They were everywhere. They knew what you were to bed. They prosecuted people for the thoughts in our heads. What does it mean to monitor thoughts? Spying means a lot more than watching what you bought. It's the feds always knowing what you've got in your head. Not only whoever with whom you share your bed, but whether you're compliant or a threat instead. A head like MLK to be neutralized. The word the FBI used decades of lies exposed, revealed as institutionalized. inside. The feds bombed Earth activist Judy Berry and lied, and those lies go all the way up the chain of command. The agencies lied, and judges went on the stand. The director, the head honcho, the man claims his lies rough land, and he didn't understand. It's the agencies against the Constitution. We the people are the one the government is abusing. We can force any acronym to make a new choice when we build a movement, each raising a voice. Some fools think Edward Snowden is a traitor, but they ignore everything that happened later. Congress lied to by executive officials, talking about corruption in the Capitol for shizzle. Democracies fizzle when the people are watched. That's why the NSA's got to be stopped, and the FBI too. Don't forget what they do. Entire agencies arrayed against you, raiding the homes of peaceful activists, setting in motion predictable plot twists, arresting democracy to bind her wrists. The constitutional coup already happened. It's DHS biometric data collection, surveillance drones, automatic license detections, departments of corrections, eclipsing universities. We must all resist, or will be history.